I never thought a jacket could change everything, but here I am, 3 months later, still holding on to it like some kind of lifeline. His jacket. Reed's jacket. The navy blue one that smells like cedar and something else I can't quite name. Something that makes my chest feel tight whenever I bury my face in it when no one's watching. I should give it back. I know I should. But every time I think about returning it, I find another excuse to keep it just one more day. It started at Marcus's party back in October. I almost didn't go. Friday nights usually found me in my apartment with a book and some takeout, perfectly content in my solitude. But Marcus had been persistent, texting me all week about how I needed to get out more, how I was becoming a hermit at 26, how this party would be different. I finally caved, mostly to stop the relentless notifications lighting up my phone. The apartment was already packed when I arrived, bodies pressed together in that familiar party configuration where everyone's talking too loud to compensate for the music. I grabbed a beer from the kitchen and positioned myself near the balcony door, my usual strategy for these things. Close enough to look social, far enough to escape when needed. That's when I first saw him. Reed was standing by the bookshelf, actually looking at the books instead of using them as a backdrop for conversation. He pulled one out, flipped through a few pages, smiled at something he read. The gesture was so genuine, so unhurried in the chaos of the party that I found myself staring. He had dark hair that fell across his forehead, the kind of casual mess that looked effortless but probably took some attention. When he glanced up and caught me watching, I should have looked away. Instead, I held his gaze for 3 heartbeats before turning to the window like I'd been examining the view all along. My reflection in the glass couldn't hide the flush creeping up my neck. I'd been aware of my attraction to men for years, had even dated a few, but it was always something I kept carefully compartmentalized. Work colleagues didn't know. My family didn't know. Even Marcus, my closest friend, only suspected. I'd become an expert at keeping that part of myself tucked away, safe from judgment or questions or the complicated conversations I wasn't ready to have. The view's better from the balcony. His voice came from right behind me, warm and slightly amused. I turned to find Reed standing there, holding 2 fresh beers and offering one to me. Up close, I noticed his eyes were this unusual shade of green, like sea glass. "I'm actually trying to avoid the balcony," I said, accepting the beer. "Heights aren't really my thing." "Ah, a man who knows his limits." "I'm Reed." He extended his hand and I shook it, noticing how his grip was firm but not aggressive, how his skin was warm against mine. "Dylan," I managed, pulling my hand back before the contact could linger too long. "Friend of Marcus's." "Same. Well, friend of a friend, technically. I'm starting to think everyone here is connected by about 6 degrees of Marcus." His smile was easy, inviting. "So, what do you do when you're not avoiding balconies at parties you clearly didn't want to attend?" I laughed despite myself. "That obvious. You've been standing in the same spot for 20 minutes, holding your beer like a shield. Trust me, I recognize a fellow reluctant partygoer." He leaned against the wall beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Cedar, I realized. That was the scent. "I'm a graphic designer, freelance mostly. You?" "Marketing analyst. Thrilling stuff." I took a sip of beer to have something to do with my hands. "How'd you end up here if you're not a party person?" "Same as you, probably. Friend insisted I needed to be more social, threatened to show up at my apartment if I didn't come." He tilted his head toward the crowd. "Though I have to say, this is significantly better than standing alone." Something in the way he said it made my pulse quicken. Was he flirting? I couldn't tell. I'd never been good at reading these situations, especially with men. With women, the signals were familiar even if I wasn't interested. With men, everything felt coded, uncertain, dangerous in a way that both terrified and thrilled me. We talked for an hour, maybe more. The party continued around us, but I barely noticed. Reed had this way of listening that made you feel like whatever you were saying was the most interesting thing he'd heard all day. He told me about a project he was working on, a rebranding for a local bookstore, and his eyes lit up when he described it. I found myself watching his hands as he gestured, noticing the way his fingers moved, elegant and expressive. "Want to get some air?" he asked eventually. "I know a spot that's not the balcony." He led me up a narrow staircase to the roof, which technically wasn't supposed to be accessible, but Reed knew about a door that didn't quite latch. The October air hit me immediately, cool enough to make me wish I'd brought a jacket. The city spread out before us, lights glittering against the dark sky. "Better view, no terrifying height sensation," Reed said, sitting on the ledge of a raised planter box. "Well, less terrifying anyway." I sat beside him, acutely aware of the 6 inches between us. "You bring all the guys you meet at parties up here." He laughed, and I realized what I'd said. My heart stopped. I'd just assumed, just revealed something about my own thoughts without meaning to. But Reed didn't seem fazed. "Only the interesting ones," he said quietly. "And for the record, there haven't been many of those." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken things hanging between us. I could feel my carefully constructed walls starting to crack. This was dangerous. This was exactly the kind of situation I usually avoided. But something about Reed made me want to stay, to see where this could go. "I'm not really out," I heard myself say. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "I mean, I know who I am, but most people in my life don't. It's just easier that way." Reed nodded slowly. "I get that. I was there for a long time. Still am, with some people." He paused. "It's exhausting though, isn't it? The constant editing of yourself." "Yeah." My voice came out rough. "It really is." He shifted slightly closer, his shoulder almost touching mine. "For what it's worth, I think you're brave for being here, for talking to me, for saying that just now." I wanted to kiss him. The realization hit me with startling clarity. I wanted to close that small distance between us and find out if his lips were as soft as they looked, if kissing him would feel like coming home or jumping off a cliff or both. But I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That's when the wind picked up, cutting through my thin button-down shirt. I shivered involuntarily. "Cold?" Reed was already shrugging out of his jacket before I could protest. "Here, take this." "I'm fine, really." "Dylan." The way he said my name stopped me. "Take the jacket. I run warm anyway." He draped it over my shoulders, and the weight of it felt like more than fabric. It felt like a promise, like a secret we were sharing. I pulled it closer, breathing in that cedar scent mixed with something uniquely him. "Thanks," I managed. We stayed on that roof until the party started winding down, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in a small town where being different meant being invisible. I told him about my family, about the careful distance I maintained to avoid difficult questions. We discovered we'd both read the same obscure science fiction series, that we both preferred rainy days to sunny ones, that we'd both spent years feeling like we were watching life through a window instead of living it. When we finally headed back down, he walked me to my car. The jacket was still around my shoulders. "I should give this back," I said, starting to take it off. "Keep it for now." His hand touched mine, stopping me. "You can return it next time." Next time. The words hung in the air between us, full of possibility. "Next time?" I repeated, and he smiled. He put his number in my phone before I drove away. I watched him in my rearview mirror, standing under the streetlight, and felt something shift inside me. Something I wasn't ready to name yet. That was 3 months ago, and I still have his jacket. It's hanging in my closet right now, between my work shirts and my winter coat. I've seen Reed 17 times since that party. We got coffee the week after, sitting in a corner booth at this place he knew, talking until they started stacking chairs around us. We went to a bookstore the following weekend, wandering the aisles and recommending titles to each other. He showed me his favorite design work. I introduced him to my favorite hiking trail. We never called them dates. We never labeled what we were doing. But somewhere between coffee and bookstores and long walks, I fell in love with him. It happened so gradually I didn't notice until I was already gone. Until the thought of not seeing him felt like missing a vital organ. The jacket became a talisman, a physical reminder of that first night. Every time he asked about it, I had an excuse. I forgot. It's at the cleaners. I keep meaning to bring it. He'd smile like he knew I was lying, like he didn't mind at all. 2 weeks ago, everything changed. We were at my apartment, supposedly watching a movie, but really just talking like we always did. He was sitting on one end of my couch, I was on the other, that careful distance we always maintained. But something felt different that night. The air felt charged, expectant. "Dylan," he said during a quiet moment in the film, "can I ask you something?" My heart started racing. "Sure." "Why do you still have my jacket?" I could have deflected. I could have made another excuse, but I was tired of hiding, tired of pretending, tired of keeping this enormous thing locked inside me. "Because giving it back feels like ending something," I said quietly, "and I don't want this to end." He was quiet for so long I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. Then he moved closer, closing that distance we'd been maintaining for months. "This?" he asked softly. "What is this exactly?" "I don't know." I forced myself to meet his eyes. "But I know that I think about you constantly. I know that seeing your name on my phone makes me smile like an idiot. I know that I've never felt this way about anyone before, and it terrifies me, but I don't want to run from it anymore." "Good," he said. And then he kissed me. It wasn't my first kiss with a man, but it was the first one that mattered. The first one that felt like truth instead of experimentation, like beginning instead of ending. His hand came up to cup my face, and I leaned into it, into him, into this moment I'd been both dreading and craving for months. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless. "I've wanted to do that since the night we met," he admitted. "Since I saw you standing by that window, looking like you'd rather be anywhere else. There was something about you, Dylan. Something real in a room full of people playing pretend. I'm still scared," I told him honestly, "of what this means, of who I'll have to tell, of how my life will change." "I know. I'm scared too." He took my hand, threading our fingers together. "But maybe we can be scared together. Maybe that makes it less terrifying." I looked at our joined hands, at the way his fingers fit perfectly between mine, and felt something settle in my chest. Not certainty, exactly, but something close to it, something that felt like hope. We've been together since that night officially, though we're still figuring out what that means. I've told Marcus, who laughed and said he'd known for months, that we weren't nearly as subtle as we thought. Reed's been patient with my need to take things slow with other people, to come out on my own timeline. He introduced me to his friends last week, casually, his hand finding mine under the table like it was the most natural thing in the world. The jacket's still in my closet. I asked him about it yesterday, whether he wanted it back now. "Do you want to give it back?" he asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. That jacket represents the night everything changed, the moment I started letting myself want something I'd been denying for so long. But it also represents hiding, keeping secrets, the version of myself that was too afraid to reach for what I wanted. "No," I said finally, "but maybe for different reasons now." He smiled, that same easy smile from the first night we met. "Keep it as long as you want. I like the idea of you having something of mine." "I have more than your jacket," I told him, feeling brave. "Yeah?" He pulled me closer. What else do you have? Everything, I said simply, if you're offering. I am. He kissed my forehead, my cheek, my lips. I absolutely am. So the jacket stays in my closet, but now it's not a secret or an excuse. It's a reminder of the night I met someone who made me want to stop hiding, who made me believe that being seen completely could be beautiful instead of terrifying. It's a reminder that sometimes the things that scare us most are the things most worth doing. I still catch myself reaching for it sometimes, pulling it on when Reed's not around, breathing in that cedar scent that now mingles with my own. But the best nights are the ones when he's here, when I don't need the jacket because I have him, solid and real and choosing me every day. Marcus was right in the end. That party was different. It was the night I stopped watching life through a window and finally stepped through the door. And I have Reed's jacket hanging in my closet to prove it happened. To prove I was brave enough to take it when he offered, brave enough to keep it, and finally, brave enough to understand what it really meant. It meant he was giving me a reason to see him again. It meant he felt it too, that electric possibility crackling between us. It meant that sometimes the smallest gestures carry the weight of everything we're too afraid to say out loud. I'm not afraid anymore. Well, that's not entirely true. I'm still scared sometimes. Still figuring out how to be this version of myself in a world that doesn't always make space for it. But Reed's hand in mine makes it easier. His smile when I walk into a room makes it worthwhile. His patience with my process makes it possible. The jacket stays. And so does he. And so do I, finally, completely, authentically myself. Total_char_count. 16,847.